Happy New Year. It's a new day. It's a new year, beginning of all good things that are going to happen this year. And I believe that God has a great year for you this year. I really do. You could do something great this year. And maybe you say to me, well, Nancy, I tried to do something great last year and I failed. Yeah, it turned out that I found out that I'm way too limited. I don't have enough talent, don't have enough education, I don't know the right people, I'm too fat, I'm just too limited. I understand how you feel, but what I'm telling you is that God has a great year for you this year. And maybe you can say that you do not have enough resources to make it happen. And really, if you had won that Powerball, then it turns out that you would have gone ahead and started doing what you were supposed to do. So evidently, God didn't mean for you to do anything because you didn't win the Powerball. So you're just going to sit in your recliner and eat some Cheetos and watch the Kardashians, so. But what I'm telling you is, don't give up. And you say to me, Nancy, you can say I'm giving up, but really what I'm doing is I'm being realistic. I ain't got what it takes. It reminds me of those two little boys that were on the playground, and the one little boy said to the other one, so, what do you want to be when you give up? Don't give up. Absolutely don't give up. Maybe you suffered a tremendous loss last year, and you're still grieving, and that grief and those feelings of hopelessness really have you just in a deep hole. Or maybe someone wronged you. You were so wronged last year, and you're still reeling from the anger and the disappointment that you feel. And so you're dead in the water. Or maybe you're just so comfy that you're being lazy and a stick of dynamite under your derriere could not blast you off that comfy zone. Well, what I'm telling you is, don't give up, get going. It's a new day, and God has great things for you. This could be your year of Jubilee. And you say, well, what's the key? What is it that you want me to do, Nancy? Well, maybe you could do what Jesus did. Jesus actually had limited assets, 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and he fed 5,000 and more people in the desert. Maybe you know the story. It's one of those things where Jesus and his disciples were out in the wilderness, and Jesus was preaching, and the disciples were preaching, and they were healing. And there were huge crowds of people that had come around, just huge crowds. It turns out that Jesus and the disciples were like rock stars, and there were masses just thronging them, and it was overwhelming. And they had been out in the desert for about 3 days, and the people were beginning to faint from hunger. I mean, it was a serious situation. It was kind of overwhelming. And so one of the disciples thought that he would counsel the Son of God as to what to do. So he came up and said, Master, can't you see? All these people, they're going to faint. You need to dismiss them and send them out into the nearby town so that they can buy some bread. And Jesus said, you give them something to eat. I always thought that was a little bit of a snarky, kind of smart aleck thing for Jesus to say. But actually, he truly meant it. He meant it. What he meant was that the disciples had the ability to fill overwhelming need by accessing the supernatural power of God. And what I'm telling you is, you have that ability too. Jesus said that to have the disciples, have the people sit down and get into groups of 50 and 100 and sit down. And then what Jesus did is key. He looked up into heaven and he thanked the Father. He didn't have enough. All he had was 5 loaves and 2 fishes, but he thanked the Father for the meager, and when he broke it, he watched the Father multiply it and make it much more. He had an attitude of gratitude for the meager, and he had an attitude of faithful expectation for the much more. He thanked God for the little that he had, and then he thanked God for a lot more that God was going to bring. That is key. It's faith. And faith, a lot of times, is risky. It's risky to thank God and to use the little bit that you have and then thank him for the more that's going to come. But that is what Jesus did, and that is what God wants you to do too. Maybe you have a need or a desire to do something, but you don't have enough resources. Well, you need to be like Jesus, take stock of what you have, be willing to do something with it and turn it over to God and use your resources, break it, and watch God multiply it. Now, it turns out that he may not multiply things the way that you think he's going to, but he will move you forward. But I'm telling you, thankfulness is the key. Be thankful. What have you got? Maybe you're left with next to nothing. Well, you've got something. If you have next to nothing, then that's not nothing. That's something. Maybe you're sick and you don't have the health you used to have. You might have some health. Maybe you can do something with what you've got. Maybe you lost a relationship, and so here you are sitting here lonely. I bet you know somebody else that you can be a friend to and help them in their time of need. I'm telling you, take what you have, be thankful to God, thank him for the little that you have, for the meager, and thank him for the more. Have an attitude of expectant thankfulness and watch God multiply. I'll tell you, it's absolutely amazing. You can hear story after story of people who started with nothing, put their hand to it, thanked God for it, and started to move forward and get more and more and more. God has called you to do great things. There are needs that need to be met that only you can fill, and God wants to fill them through you. So my advice to you is that you thank him for the meager and expect much more from him. Thank him for the much more. You know, faith calls those things that be not as though they were. And that's what faith is. Faith gets ready for the multiplication. And you know what? It's just elementary. It's elementary, my dear Watson. This is my dog, Watson. I love him so much. Look how good he is now. See, I thanked God for the little meager behavior that he had, and now look, he's got great behavior now. So you see, there's nothing that God can't do if you thank him, and then just wait and let him multiply. Use what you have. Get ready. Give it to God. Pick up your shovel and get to digging. I'm telling you, God will multiply your efforts. I'm Nancy, and this is Watson. May you have a blessed day.